Well, hello, Fabrice Metan. It's so nice to have you. You are the founder of Simplify My Numbers, an accounting firm located here in Wichita, Kansas, which doesn't matter where you're located in your business anymore, does it?
That's right. Yep.
I love
We
that.
pretty much took care of
Well,
anybody.
I'm really excited to be interviewing you today, and I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit about your story. And I've got some good questions I want to ask you,
Okay.
and that way people can find out a little bit more about you. So why don't you just tell us, start off by telling us, what do you do and for how long? And you could talk about both businesses if you want to, or just one.
For sure. Like as you mentioned, my name is Fabrice Metan. I'm the founder and lead accountant at Simplify My Numbers, which is basically a tax and accounting company for small business owners. I worked as an accountant for many years before, basically 8 years before starting my own firm in 2018. And then basically been running Simplify My Numbers for the past 5 years now. So
Okay. So why did you decide to get into this? I've just got to ask, why did you decide to start your own business? You could have stayed with who you were working with, but
sure.
you decided to do it, go out on your own.
Right. I always had an inclination for entrepreneurship for sure. I kind of always knew that I was eventually going to start my own. The real question was whether I was, really going to start a business in accounting or a business in any other field.
Okay.
To be honest with you, when I was thinking of myself as an entrepreneur, I initially was not thinking of myself as an owner of an accounting firm. I thought
Okay.
accounting was what I used to do professionally, and then I would eventually start another business, which I did as well
Mhm.
in the media world with a partner of mine. But as far as starting in accounting, when I went on my own, a lot of people kind of knew what I used to do professionally and were approaching me about helping them with their numbers. At first I was a little reluctant, wasn't sure if I was going to go for it. But then after a while, started helping two, three, four people, and then it took a life of its own. And I realized I
Mm.
was very good at being able to explain things in layman terms to most entrepreneurs that do not necessarily enjoy numbers and taxes.
That's
So,
right. Most of us don't enjoy that one bit. Let's see. I had a thought I wanted to ask you something. What was it? Oh, I can't remember what it was. Oh, I know what it was. Tell me about the mind shift
mhm,
the state of mind or the mind shift you had to make going from accountant, which is to business owner, business accounting firm owner. Those are two
that's right.
big, totally different things. How did you
That's
make
right.
that shift?
Yeah, so it's a big shift because as an accountant, I'm pretty much a technician, right? So I'm
Mm-hmm.
actually doing the work, I'm behind the computer, crunching the numbers and all of that. As a business owner, I kind of have to step away from that chair and analyzing everything that deals with the business, right? So the delivery to the customer, so customer service, how do I go out there and actually sell a contract? How do I make sure that I know how to process someone payments? Multiple areas, payroll, how do you train employees and things like that. And so it was a process. It's definitely something that I took my time with and did step by step. I first was allowing myself to pretty much wear all the hats and do everything in addition to what I used to do, from a technical standpoint, what I knew how to do, right? But then slowly, once I understood that, man, I am way too busy. I have to figure out the tasks that I can actually train or teach to someone else. And then at that point, I was able to train the right people around me to kind of help me with certain tasks and kind of got into a better place. But I'm still learning because there's still multiple areas that I would love to to put in the hands of trusted, team
Mm-hmm.
players. So
Yeah, always will be challenges to overcome, right? I mean, it's
for sure,
never the same business. You can wake up tomorrow and your business is different. You,
right,
you, you really
totally.
have to, the economy changes, the people change, the pandemic happens you know. So when we were talking before we started to record that you have a niche in your business, talk to us a little bit about what your niche is or niche,
Mhm.
and then who is your ideal customer?
Sure. So essentially, from 2012 through 2018, I was working as the controller for a group of construction companies.
Okay.
Uh, and those companies were in multiple trades: glass, masonry, steel, rebar,
Mm,
concrete. So I got a chance to really understand what accounting and what, the financial aspect of the construction industry, and what it was to be subcontractors and dealing with all the different challenges, right? And so that is really my niche, is really
okay.
being able to use the experience that I gained at that level, for companies that together were grossing between 20 to $30 million a year, but being able to bring that down to the small business level that are generating between, a quarter million a year all the way up to about $2 to $3 million a year.
Okay.
And that's kind of the niche area that I try to focus on. So construction contractors, whether general contractors or subcontractors,
Okay.
is really who I love working with. I believe that we do a great job of showing them what their job profitability is, their company profitability as a whole, but also how to manage their cash flow, and how to get funding when it's needed, right?
Mm.
So all these multiple areas are things that we do a pretty good job at serving those clients.
And
Mhm.
getting funding and some of those things are not what you would call traditional accounting.
Right.
But it's part of accounting, because without proper accounting and understanding the process for funding, it's its own little beast.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. So essentially, we of course need the accounting information to be able to go out there and ask for funding, right? So even
Yes.
having some, conversations with bankers, we kind of understand what they need to see, what they like to see, what type of trends they want to analyze. But then there's a way to present that information as well. What's the story? Are
Hmm.
you able to look at the numbers and explain why you had such a jump in these kind of expenses in that particular quarter, right? So we do a really good job of, analyzing all of that and knowing how to explain and do a good interpretation of those numbers, for the
Awesome.
parties that need it.
I love what you said, that what's the story behind the numbers, because there is.
There is a big story
There
behind the
is
numbers,
lots
right?
of
The numbers
chapters
are
and awesome.
exactly.
So, well, so you've been in business, you said since 2018, and then before that you were with that controller as a controller.
Mhm.
Since you've been on your own, you've experienced the pandemic.
Of
How
course.
how did that impact your business, and what have you continued since the pandemic, if anything?
For sure. So it was very interesting in my line of work. The pandemic was actually a very good event for our business from a business standpoint. Not good in real life, right?
No,
But
no.
from a business standpoint, what happened is it created a ton of work from an accounting and tax perspective, because all of a sudden the government created a ton of programs, the PPP, the EIDL, any of those different loans and credit programs, the ERTC, I'm sorry. And
Hmm.
so what happened with that is that at that point, I was kind of early in the beginning of my business, and I took on the challenge to go read those bills front to back and really understand how to deal with those specific credits. And so I was able to help a ton of small businesses get their PPP, their EIDL, the ERTC credit, and things like that, which basically took us to the next level of helping a ton of businesses that we didn't have access to in the past,
Hmm.
because most accounting firms did not want to deal with that stuff, early on. And
Right.
so it helped out. The other thing that it also did was help us become a more efficient firm. We basically started to do a lot of things remotely. All of my employees now work from home. We realized that we don't necessarily have to be in the office unless we have to have team meeting or training and things like that.
Hmm.
We all join in the office, but everybody works from home. It really helped me start trusting that as long as I'm giving the right directions and deadlines to people, they're able to meet, the requirements of the job without me having to watch what time did they clock in or clock out. And so everyone in my team is doing a great job at that. And then we're just efficient now to where we have all of the technology to start working with clients that are from different states, other cities and things like that. We don't necessarily have to be in the same city anymore. So for me, it definitely helped the business grow. Um, but it was very challenging for the business owners that I was working with. And so just being able to be a resource, someone that could help them secure the funds they needed to survive, really meant a lot to me.
Right. Yeah, at the time I was wondering, was it the right thing for the government to make all that money available? But I think it really did help business.
It
But
did
you had to
a
know
lot
what
of
you were doing,
for sure, for
you
sure.
know. And
Mhm.
those people that were, that were able to get help or figure it out, that's probably why many of them are still in business.
That's right.
It was
Exactly.
kind of a blessing for sure.
Mhm.
So I heard you say technician, and you made some references, and that reminds me of a book called The E-Myth, where they refer to the
Right.
technician, okay, and the manager. Do you have a book that you love that you would recommend to someone that's a business owner or an entrepreneur or just thinking about?
Right. Do you mind if I share three books?
Oh, yes, 3 is great.
So E-Myth is actually one of them.
Okay,
It's
me
definitely
too.
one of my favorite books, because obviously in our shoes, at least in my shoes, it was very important to understand what it was to step out of those shoes of being a technician and
Yes.
actually knowing how to run the business. Because it doesn't mean that you know how to run the business of, whatever you're doing, right? So I learned a lot from that. Another book that I love is Blue Ocean Strategy. I think it's a very good book to kind of show you how to create a certain niche for yourself and do something that kind of helps you not be in a pool full of sharks and competing in the red ocean. You can just step out and do something totally innovative and be more in a blue ocean where you're not really competing with anybody. And then the third one that I really like is also called The Power of Consistency. It's not as popular, but it's definitely a book that motivated me a lot when I first started, and kind of gives you a reality check that it's going to be a lot more important to wake up every morning and be very consistent at those important tasks that you have to take, rather than being dreaming of all these big things that you want to do. Are you consistent at the little things? And so those will be the three titles that I can share.
Those are great. I've heard of the last two, but I haven't read them. I've read Atomic Habits, and I've read The Compound Effect, which is the power of consistency.
That's right.
And a book written by Darren Hardy. He compares these two guys all the way through the book, and one exercises 1 hour a week and one doesn't, and they end up so different, just little tiny things that they do differently. Pretty amazing. So thank you for that. I'll have to definitely check those out. So since you've been a business owner, what's been your biggest learning?
Ooh,
No.
there's so many, right? But I think probably one of the simplest things that I've learned is that, and it probably sounds very pessimistic, but it would take you more time and more money than you think. So it's almost like every single time, and I'm a planner, so I'm going to create projections and I have this ideas and this is happening in the next 2 years or 3 years. What I realize is it doesn't matter how much planning you do. There's so many moving parts of things that you don't necessarily control. We just talked about COVID, right? So all these different things that just happen that you don't control, that it seems like it'll always take a little bit more time and more money. And so when I speak to entrepreneurs and they're saying, well, I'm about to get funding and have enough for the first 6 months of operating expenses, I always say, why don't you go for 12? Just in case, because I know how long it could take. And so all these different things, but I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I learned. So it helps me be very careful, but at the same time, I want to call that patiently aggressive. So you wake up every day being very aggressive at what you need to accomplish, but you're still very patient, understanding that it's a process and it's going to take a while to get to what you get. So.
Yeah, I like that advice, looking for 12 months instead of 6, because there are things you just overlook, like feeding yourself.
For sure.
Or paying yourself a salary, those kinds of things. Sometimes people in business don't do that, and I rather not see that, but so we do have a newsletter, and we welcome you to make an offer to the people who are listening to the video or see the newsletter. Is there any kind of offer you'd like to make available?
Yeah, I think that so now obviously right now we're in the middle of our tax season, right? So it's almost impossible to do anything, at least for myself personally.
Sure.
But I would say that right after the tax season, so anytime after April 15th, to anyone that has access to the offer that you'll send out, we will do a 30-minute complimentary general consultation. And that'll be a consultation on anything tax and accounting. So if they have questions on their taxes, on their accounting, their bookkeeping, or how exactly can we help them have better visibility in their business, we'll do a 30-minute complimentary session for sure.
Sounds good. So anytime April 15th to say November?
Yeah, I'll say
Okay.
April 15th all the way to September 15th.
September.
Just
Okay.
because then in September, everyone that we filed an extension for, we have
Okay.
to now deal with.
Okay.
So that would kind of be like the window of time where I know we can
Right.
actually, help people.
Why don't they just change the deadline, right?
All right.
So I have another question I wanted to ask you. I'm not sure how old you are, but I wanted to ask you, what would you tell your 18-year-olds? What advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
That's a really good question. I have to give that a little bit of thought, right? So, hmm. What advice would I give myself at 18 years old? I'm trying to think who I used to be,
I
right?
know, right? Were you a lot? Would you say you were a lot different then?
Oh yeah, I definitely
Okay.
think I was a lot different. But I guess one of the things maybe that I would say try to get as much financial literacy as you could. There's a lot
Mm.
of mistakes that I think I made um, early on in my life that if I had the knowledge that I have today, that was honestly accessible. It's just that I did not have as much interest into this
Oh,
type of stuff.
okay.
Have a little bit more interest in anything that is related to financial literacy, and it'll set you, way ahead of where you might be if you don't. And
I
that's
love that advice to your 18-year-old self.
yeah.
Yeah. Yes, just think about a young person studying diligently about finances and investing at the age of 18. How
Right.
many amazing things you could do with that.
Definitely. I mean, I
Wow.
literally just had a consultation today with a young 22-year-old entrepreneur, um, but so ahead of his time when it comes to,
Mm.
understanding that he needed to keep his receipts. He needed to keep the business cash in that account, and it wasn't his, and he wasn't paying himself, and he accumulated so much cash in that account, and I was just amazed. And I told him, if I knew what you realized at the age of 22, that you're smart enough to book a consultation with an accountant and talk
Yes.
about your business. I mean, those are things that are gonna, set you apart and really put you on the right path.
Mhm.
By the time you're my age, you're gonna be way further than I am, and
Right.
that's kind of what, when I
Yeah.
looked at that, I said, "Wow, I wish I knew some of those things at that
That's a
age."
beautiful thing. There's a guy named Keith Cunningham who's a consultant guy, and
Uh-huh.
one of the things he says is, "What would your life be like if you could unwind the three stupid financial mistakes you made in your life?"
Oh man, I
I
tell
mean,
you,
all of us have them. That
right,
stupid investment we made, or something we did without
right,
thinking, or taking money out of a 401k. People do that.
right.
I love that. So, oh,
Yeah,
anyway,
definitely.
but well, thank you for answering that question. I know you had to give it some thought, but I found it to be quite interesting. And obviously, you have at some point in your life decided to learn about financials, so it has served you
For sure.
well.
For sure.
Although you wish you could have gone back in time and told
Right. I just
yourself.
wish I started sooner.
Yes. Well, I've had a great time interviewing you, and it's good to know that your specialty is in that construction area, and it sounds like 250K to 2.5 million. So you've got a real nice niche there.
Mhm.
And those construction companies, when managed well financially and other ways, can really grow.
Oh yeah,
There's a
it
great
definitely can.
opportunity. So
It
isn't it
definitely
nice
can.
to be a part of an industry where there's growth and development and
That's
people
right.
adding jobs? So
Definitely.
so much
And that's what's
fun.
beautiful about it is it's an industry where there's a lot of job creation.
Hmm.
None of them can do it alone, right? So they got to
Right.
continue to either have contractors or hiring a ton of W-2 employees and things like that. And so it's just there's just a lot of great things that happen in that industry. So I enjoy it for sure.
Yeah, I think it's great. Well, the industry's lucky to have you. So the last question I'll ask is, what's the best way for people to find you? If I could get your website from you, your phone or
Yeah,
email, or and what other social media I know you're on LinkedIn, so we
for
can
sure.
put your LinkedIn profile in this video
Mhm.
too.
Yeah, so our website is simplifymynumbers.com.
Okay.
You can also find Simplify My Numbers on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I think I actually just started a TikTok last year. I'm
Woo!
learning that a little bit.
The accountant on TikTok. Gotta love it.
That's right.
I love TikTok.
Trying to
I
see if
limit
this,
myself, but
yeah,
I mean,
it's definitely a different platform. Just
it
trying
is.
to figure out how to stay entertaining on
But 2
that.
billion people are there, so we have to be there, you know?
Right. Exactly.
So
Exactly.
what's a good phone number?
Yeah. Phone number is 316-749-7494.
Okay. And then email Fabrice at simplifymynumbers.com.
You got it.
Right. Okay. Good. Well, thank you for that. I really enjoyed interviewing you. And I know that you've taken time out of the tax season. Some people will see this video long after tax season, but when an accountant decides to do something important like this and share about your business, let people know what you're doing, why you've been successful, inspire people, I appreciate that very much.
No, not a problem. And I really appreciate the opportunity as well. Grateful for that. And so definitely look forward to doing more things together.
Me too. All right. Well, thank you. And I'm going to stop recording and say goodbye.
All
Take
righty.
care, Fabrice. Bye-bye.